afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our daily live coverage as we continue to follow the latest regional and international developments amid a rapidly changing global landscape. Attention still remains centered on the ongoing political, security, and economic shifts across the region, as governments and institutions closely monitor developments and evaluate their potential impacts on stability, markets, and international relations. Here in Kuwait, authorities continue efforts to maintain readiness, strengthen cooperation and coordination among state institutions, and ensure the uninterrupted flow of essential services while closely observing regional developments. Throughout this broadcast, we'll bring to you comprehensive coverage, expert analysis, and live updates highlighting the broader implications of these developments on regional security, the global economy, and diplomatic efforts underway internationally. Stay with us throughout this coverage as we bring to you the latest updates and news from the region. The Gulf stands between two possibilities. U.S. President Donald Trump says the naval blockade on Iran will be lifted, while demanding that Tehran reopens the Strait of Hormuz immediately without any transit fees and removes the remaining naval mines. But what sounded like a breakthrough quickly became more complicated. Iran says there is still no final agreement, and it wants proof that Washington's move is real, not just another political headline, preferring actions over words. More on that in this report.
In the Strait of Hormuz, ships are not the only things moving. So are messages of war, calculations of power, and the fragile possibility of a deal between Washington and Tehran. U.S. President Donald Trump has made a striking announcement. The naval blockade on Iran, he says, will be lifted. Ships trapped in the strait can begin returning home. But this was not a simple message of de-escalation. It came with conditions, pressure, and a warning. Trump demanded that Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz immediately, with no transit fees in either direction. He also called on Tehran to remove the remaining naval mines, after saying that American minesweepers had already destroyed several of them. Then he raised the stakes even higher. Iran, he said, must agree that it will never possess a nuclear weapon. For a moment, the announcement looked like the beginning of a breakthrough, but almost immediately, a bigger question emerged. Is this the start of a real agreement or another political move on the edge of war? Trump himself said he was heading into a Situation Room meeting to make the final decision on the war with Iran. After nearly 2 hours of talks, no decisive outcome was announced. A White House official said Trump would not make any deal with Tehran unless it was good for America and met his red lines. In Tehran, the response was cautious and cold. Iran's foreign ministry said messages with Washington are still being exchanged, but the Memorandum of Understanding has not yet become final. More importantly, Iran says it wants to verify the credibility of the American move. Is the blockade really being lifted, or is this just another headline? Tehran does not see the issue as an American favor. It says the blockade was illegal from the beginning and a violation of the ceasefire. And it insists that Iran will act according to its own national interests, not according to American instructions. At the center of this confrontation stands Hormuz. Washington wants the passage open, unrestricted, and free of fees. Iran says hostile ships remain banned, while commercial vessels may pass in coordination with its forces. As for the future management of the strait, Tehran says that it's a matter for the countries overlooking it, Iran and Oman. In a parallel development, Pakistan was also present in Washington. Its foreign minister, Ishaq Dar, discussed the Iranian issue with its American counterpart, Marco Rubio, at a time when Islamabad is playing a role in mediation efforts to end the war and solidify understandings. Pakistan's involvement confirms that the crisis is no longer merely bilateral. It has become a regional and international issue involving multiple channels and mediators. Behind the public statements, the biggest disputes remain unresolved. Frozen Iranian assets, nuclear guarantees, highly enriched uranium, maritime security, and the shape of any agreement that could survive years of mistrust. American sources say the two sides are close to a deal. Iranian sources say Trump's remarks are a mix of truth and falsehood, an attempt to declare victory before an agreement exists. So the blockade may be ending, but suspicion is not. Hormuz may reopen, but the battle over its rules is far from over. The final decision Trump speaks of is not about Iran alone. It is about the future of the Gulf. Right now, the region is not fully at peace, and it's not fully at war. It's moving through the most dangerous zone of all, the space between an announcement and an explosion.
As the ongoing geopolitical developments dominate global headlines, the spotlight turns sharply to the economic and financial resilience of the Gulf Cooperation Council region. Far from a narrative of vulnerability, GCC states are navigating this period from a position of unprecedented fiscal strength, robust bank liquidity, and mature capital markets. More on that in this report.
The global energy landscape is reacting rapidly to the latest geopolitical developments in the Gulf. But beneath the surface of volatile oil tickers lies a far more compelling story: the structural and institutional strength of the GCC economies. Decades of fiscal discipline, combined with rigorous regulatory reforms, have equipped the region with powerful shock absorbers capable of managing short-term uncertainty while securing long-term growth. From public finance perspective, the current spike in crude prices is presenting Gulf policymakers with an opportunity to optimize their balance sheets. Rather than repeating the fiscal cycles of the past, where windfalls immediately inflated public sector operational spending, Kuwait and its neighbors are focusing heavily on capital allocation. The strategic priority today is moving toward performance-based budgeting, ensuring that these sudden structural surpluses are locked into productive national wealth funds and deployed directly into domestic infrastructure. This ensures that long-term generational wealth remains decoupled from short-term geopolitical swings. In financial markets, the response has highlighted a highly mature investor base. Borsa Kuwait and Saudi Arabia's TASI have displayed remarkable resilience, anchored by a strong corporate governance and strict compliance with international financial reporting standards. Gulf-listed companies are utilizing high-quality material disclosures to maintain absolute transparency regarding risk and continuity. This transparency has successfully contained panic, stabilized international asset allocations, and kept risk premiums manageable. Furthermore, the banking sector across the GCC stands as a fortress of liquidity, heavily capitalized and strictly supervised by central banks. Gulf financial institutions possess advanced risk management models capable of buffering fluctuations in asset valuations without tightening credit lines to the private sector. While global shipping costs and war risk insurance premiums present logistic challenges, major Gulf corporations are actively redesigning cost accounting frameworks and supply chain routes. Rather than stalling, private sector expansion is exploring innovative financing structures to maintain momentum. Ultimately, this period of uncertainty is acting as an involuntary accelerator for the region's mega blueprints, Kuwait's Vision 2035 and Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. The shared strategic imperative to build resilient non-oil digital and logistical economies has never been clearer. By transforming geopolitical headwinds into catalysts for institutional reform and economic diversification, the GCC is sending a definitive message to global markets. Its financial foundations are built to last.
Since the onset of the crisis here in the Middle East, the aviation industries around the world have suffered drastically, not just from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which has interrupted the flow of jet fuel to aviation companies, but also the closure of airspaces here in the Gulf has interrupted regular, routine, scheduled routes. However, since the lull in violence and aggression in the last few weeks, we've seen the aviation industry attempting to bounce back from its lull in the last 2 months. More on that in this report.
The ongoing conflict is significantly disrupting Middle East tourism while also reshaping global traveler behavior as travelers increasingly avoid the region and shift towards closer, perceived safer destinations amid rising uncertainty. Before the escalation in February 2026, the Middle East had been the world's fastest growing tourism region, with the World Bank noting that it had already surpassed pre pandemic tourism levels by 2023, driven largely by strong growth in Gulf destinations such as the United Arab Emirates and Qatar. However, this upward trajectory sharply reversed after the conflict began, when thousands of passengers were stranded in major hubs including Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, following drone activity and widespread airspace disruption, triggering mass flight cancellations and a surge in negative travel sentiment. By March 2026, the World Travel and Tourism Council estimated that the conflict was costing the regional tourism sector approximately $600 million per day, primarily to grounded flights, closed air routes, and collapsing consumer confidence, while hotel occupancy rates in key destinations such as Dubai reportedly fell to between 15% and 20% of normal seasonal levels. These disruptions have not only affected inbound tourism but also transit flows, which are critical to the Gulf's aviation ecosystem, as the region accounts for roughly 14% of global international transit traffic, making its stability essential for long haul global connectivity. Industry analysis further suggests that prolonged instability could lead to major structural losses, with an Oxford Economics report warning that a conflict lasting more than 1 to 2 months could reduce global international arrivals by up to 38 million in 2026, representing a 27% year on year decline and an estimated $56 billion loss in tourism spending. At the same time, survey data indicated that consumer sentiment toward destinations such as the UAE, Turkey, and parts of the Middle East has deteriorated, with travelers increasingly rerouting towards Southern Europe, Spain, the Caribbean, and domestic or regional alternatives, including rail based travel and staycations. Beyond immediate economic losses, analysts emphasize that the most significant impact is behavioral rather than purely geographic, as travelers delay booking decisions, prioritize flexibility, and reassess safety perceptions before committing to long haul trips, especially through Gulf transit hubs that traditionally serve as a key global connecting point between Europe, Asia, and the Americas. As a result, the conflict is not only reducing visitor numbers but also undermining confidence in the region's role as a global aviation crossroads, potentially reshaping airline routing patterns if avoidance behaviors persist. Ultimately, experts warn that even after the conflict stabilizes, the recovery of the Middle East tourism will depend heavily on rebuilding international trust and restoring the perception of safety, not just reopening borders or resuming flights.
We are now joined with Jamal Shaheen, our KTV correspondent based in London, the UK, covering major political, economic, and international developments from the United Kingdom and Europe, with a focus on issues of interest to Kuwaiti and Gulf audiences. Hello, Mr. Shaheen. Thank you for joining us once again, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's speak about the UK GCC Free Trade Agreement, which was secured earlier this month. How is London viewing the timing of this deal amid the ongoing regional conflict? I know last time we spoke, you had told us and our viewers at home that this deal has been in the works for many years now. But what can you tell us about the specific timing, given it coincides with the regional conflict?
This is agreement is for long term, not for short term, because even all of us knows that the war in short term will be ended in even in medium term, because there is no war forever. But the agreement is a base stone and to to go ahead for the growth and to build on how to facilitate everything in military and also in trade and political and also in tourism, because this is will facilitate it. As we said before, there will be like tax remove or for many export and import. They will facilitate it, as we know, by nearly 500 million the US dollar will be removed as a tax. In the same time, we expect the United Kingdom GDP will be increased by nearly 0.1% to 1%. As we said before, it's nearly 3 billion sterling pound will be flourish the UK economy every year, and also they expect the growth of the job will be higher for the United Kingdom and also benefit for GCC country. Let's look. This will go ahead as a block GCC country, and in the same time there will be individual agreement between each country how to facilitate it much better. But the most important thing is here is they are trying to support the economy and the trade. If you support the economy and the trade, the bond in economy and the trade, it becomes strong. Any military action or political action will be followed, because if the economy is flourish from something, that the other thing should be followed.
Now, Mr. Shaheen, moving on to London's political balancing act right now. How is London balancing its commitment to Gulf security coupled with domestic political pressure to avoid a direct military entanglement? We saw very early in the conflict, Trump tried very hard to get the UK and other European allies involved directly militarily. However, we've seen them push back and rather hesitant on joining the conflict directly.
We have to go to the beginning of the war. The beginning of the war, all GCC country was against the war. It's still GCC country, including Kuwait, is still looking for de-escalate the situation back to the normality again. They don't want any de-escalation. They don't want war. Even before, most of the countries in France and in United Kingdom and EU, they confirmed, like GCC country confirmed, none of GCC country wanted to see a war, even with the private contact and bilateral contact with the United States. They are against the war. So from the beginning, the United States takes the same positioning or the same position as GCC country takes. So most of GCC country now is looking for de-escalate the situation, reopening the Strait of Hormuz back to normality like before February. It's the same here. So we can say the national interest of the UK streets is nearly the same national interest of GCC countries in the street, and the national security is nearly the same national security, because the more Strait of Hormuz is still closed, the more bad and the negative effect will be here in the economy and also in GCC country economy. Whatever they try to do still have a huge negative impact.
Mr. Shaheen, with the UK maritime trade operations closely monitoring regional incidents throughout the strategic waterways, could you tell us what specific steps the British Navy is taking to support maritime stability? We saw a few weeks ago that London, along with many other countries from Europe and around the world, held a meeting to sort of discuss a new security framework to protect maritime traffic. What can you tell us came out of this meeting, and specifically what the British Navy plans to do?
From the beginning, we have to understand the deep-rooted relationship between United Kingdom and GCC country is in the highest level now. We saw what's happened. The United Kingdom was against any access or to grant any access to the United States. But after 48 hours from the war, and the war extended to other GCC country, the situation of the United Kingdom is changed. Now we have the largest number of Typhoon fighter jet and F-35 from the British side are in the GCC country, the highest number in 15 years. Let's back to your question. The most important thing is here is this is the United Kingdom and France are established or deployed multinational force, but we have to understand it's a peaceful mission. The Secretary of Defense, John Healey, announced the United Kingdom will support this mission with $150 to make it independence effective, and they will deploy it, HMS Dragons as a mothership to scrap the mining or clear the Strait of Hormuz from mining, and also they will deploy a new defense system which has the capability to stop the fast moving boats from any side, and also to against any drone attack on the shipping. This mission will be in 3 stages. The first stage is we are already done. 12 countries agree and considering to participate in this mission. The second one will send more troops to the area or more assets. We already know that HM Dragons will be there. Also, Charles de Gaulle will be there. But the next step is how after the hostile activity is ended, they will start to clean the corridor of the Strait of Hormuz from mine. And then the fourth one, they will have a mission like a policing force to escort it, any ship, and guarantee there is no attack or any hostile activity against the shipping in the corridor of the Strait of Hormuz.
Mr. Shaheen, could you speak to us of how the British diplomacy is working within the UN Security Council to lower regional tensions and to protect civilian shipping corridors, as well as how effective international diplomatic back channels through London are being exerted to keep dialogue between the two parties?
The United Kingdom is very active in the Security Council with France and other European countries. They try to have like a international community common ground between more nations to support the diplomatic effort, which can make any agreement. It's like according to the international law. The United Kingdom and France is also working through IMO, International Maritime Organization, to go ahead with according to the international law, especially for maritime law, to back to normality again and to consider the agreement between Iran and Oman in the 1968 or 62 is the framework to work again. They are working through the Security Council and the international community to refuse any unilateral or bilateral agreement between Iran and the other to change the corridor of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the main mission now. This is the main focus now, is to collect more country to rejoin the 51 country which meeting in Paris in 17th of April, and then have another 3 military planner meeting in London to find a solution to guarantee the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz.
Now, sir, could you tell us how is the London insurance market handling the unprecedented level of risk through the Strait of Hormuz? As we know, Lloyd's Joint War Committee in London recently expanded its high-risk zones.
This is very risky. It's highly likely we will see a huge negative impact. The UK announced already 13% increase of the bill in gas and oil and other petrol station in July. This will be the highest level in 4 years. And also we saw the energy company has a debt nearly £5 billion because the consumer and the customer can't pay, and they don't have the affordability to pay all of this amount of money. This means a huge negative anti-pressure in the UK economy, because the more we have this, the more the government will have debt and the borrowing to support it more beneficial and social program and the welfare program, and at the same time they are under a huge pressure as well to increase the defense budget. So with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the negative impact will be huge, very huge. As we said before, the inflation of the food will be by end of this year 9%. We expect the inflation will be higher, and in the same time, in July, it might be the interest rates from Bank of England. It becomes higher, and this will be a huge problem for the company, or for company, and for the consumer, and for a household in the UK as well.
Now, sir, with the severe reduction in traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz, we've seen shockwaves ripple throughout economies as there's been a shock to the energy supply line. How significantly are these supply chain shocks affecting the UK's own domestic inflation and economic pressure?
Your question, I need to answer in two ways. The first one is in the politician side. The politician side, for the first time in 5 years, they are remove some sanction against the Russian oil and gas. They accept to import the fuel of jet from the Russian fuel and jet through third party, which is not before. This is give you how much they are in a big dilemma to secure the fuel for the airlines. In the economic side, we saw that there is a huge impact. Most of the things, as we mentioned before, we will see the inflation will be higher, and in the same time, the cost of living becomes higher. Most of goods and essential food and agriculture has a lot of problem. Some of the farmer said they will minimize the land they will work in it, because the high cost of working, the high cost of fertilizing, and also the lack of fertilizing itself, it becomes a big problem. For example, this government closed a CO2 factory 1 year ago, but after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, they open it again just to try to find the most important need for the fertilizing in the UK to be worked and to continue, but they still have a huge short from many essential things.
And this is a trend we're seeing not just in the UK, but throughout all of Europe. A lot of countries resorting to coal for their energy supply, reopening factories and other warehouses. That it seemed that the world was moving past these sources of energies. Is there a chance that this retracing back into coal will continue and expand throughout Europe?
Yes, because the problem here, Europe is trying to find other ways to secure the energy. But one of these ways is to import gas from United States. There is a big dilemma to import gas from United States. The agreement with the United States, or the deal with the United States, they have something called, if there is any high price during the ships in the international water, they can redirect it, this deal, to other countries. That means that the energy market here in UK and Europe is not stable. They need to pay more money. For example, from the beginning of the war till now, the EU paid nearly 32 trillion euros extra than the normal cost of the energy supply because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and they try to find another way. Like we said before, for 5 years, the United Kingdom removed some sanction in the fuel jet from Russia, because nearly 40% of the jet fuel for UK airlines is coming from Kuwait.
Now, sir, over the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of back and forth with negotiations. In the morning, Trump will announce that they're very close to signing a finalized deal, and just a few hours later, he can say that their negotiations are far from over. From the UK's perspective, are defense analysts concerned that the current diplomatic bottlenecks or stalemate could lead to a broader and more prolonged escalation in this conflict?
The problem here is, do we need to take any any announcement from Mr. Donald Trump in account or not, because we don't know which one we should take in account. Every 3 hours, his situation is changing. So even the Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, called him many times about security and the stability of the energy market. And he said, we'll do our best to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And then later, he changed his situation, like what we saw. We don't know. This is make everything is here. Is instability, uncertainty. There is no one know how we can deal with Donald Trump, because there is one more thing is I need to say. The experts or the people who have experience in the State Department and in the White House, how to deal with this problematic issue. Most of them now was fired during Elon Musk efficiency plan to sack many of the State Department and the foreign policy decision maker and expert. Now this number is nearly 50% of those people who can make the advising to the White House and the State Department are out of work now. So there is no clear plan how they can work in the second day.
Well, Mr. Shaheen, thank you very much for joining us. That's all the time we have for this interview right now. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Jamal Shaheen, our KTV correspondent, joining us from London. We'll take a short break, and after that, we'll resume our live coverage.
تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها للاستجابة للطوارئ والكوارث في ظل الأوضاع الجيوسياسية الحاصلة في المنطقة. جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي تعمل من ضمن منظومة إنسانية متكاملة مع مؤسسات دولة الكويت من حيث الاستجابة السريعة وتجهيز المتطوعين من ضمن أفرقة مختلفة للاستجابة للطوارئ في سرعة قصوى. يعد متطوعين جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي من المتطوعين اللي تم تدريبهم مكثفاً في الإسعافات الأولية والاستجابة للكوارث والاستجابة الميدانية. تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها الميدانية ورفع جاهزيتها من حيث الاستجابة للطوارئ في حالات اللي يتم ندائها. بالنسبة للمخزون الاستراتيجي لجمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي فإحنا على أتم الاستعداد للاستجابة في حال النداء من قبل مؤسسات حكومة دولة الكويت.
منظومة الاتصالات بالكويت شغالة بكفاءة عالية ولله الحمد، والهيئة العامة للاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات مستعدة لأي طارئ لا قدر الله. وفي ظل التوترات اللي تمر فيها المنطقة فعلنا خطط الطوارئ وعززنا التعاون مع الجهات المعنية عشان نضمن استقرار الخدمات الرقمية وسرعة الاستجابة لأي مستجد. الوضع تحت المتابعة وكل الجهات المختصة على أتم الجاهزية. عسى الله يحفظ الكويت وأهلها.
الإدارة العامة للدفاع المدني على استعداد تام وجاهزية عالية، ونعمل وفق خطط مدروسة ومحدثة باستمرار لمواجهة أي طارئ، ونتابع مع الجهات الحكومية كل ما يخص احتياجاتها لضمان استمرار نظام سير العمل وعجلة الإنتاج وسير الحياة الطبيعية. ونقول للجميع سلامتكم أولويتنا.
في ظل الأوضاع الراهنة معكم اليوم وزارة التجارة والصناعة المعنية في ملف الأمن الغذائي. اليوم نطمنكم بأن الوضع التمويني مستقر تماماً ولا يوجد أي نقص في المواد الغذائية الأساسية. كذلك حركة الأسواق طبيعية والسلع متوفرة في نقاط البيع والمخازن بشكل منتظم. إنتاج المياه في المصانع المحلية مستمر على مدار الساعة لضمان تلبية احتياجات الجميع. سلاسل الإمداد تعمل بشكل طبيعي وسلس ولا توجد أي عوائق في تدفق السلع إلى الأسواق، كما أن الأسواق المركزية وجميع نقاط البيع تعمل بشكل طبيعي، والجمعيات التعاونية تواصل نشاطها المعتاد دون أي تأثير. ونؤكد على الجاهزية الكاملة لخطط الطوارئ مع استمرار فرق الرقابة التجارية في متابعة الأسواق ميدانياً بشكل يومي لضمان استقرار الأسعار وتوفر السلع الأساسية فيها. لذلك اليوم احنا نطمنكم ونبشركم بأن الأمور طيبة إن شاء الله ويحافظ الله.
بتوجيهات مباشرة ومتابعة حثيثة ومتواصلة من قبل مجلس الوزراء ووزيرة الشؤون الاجتماعية الدكتورة أمثال الحويلة، سارعت وزارة الشؤون إلى وضع الخطط المسبقة التي تهدف من خلالها إلى المحافظة على مستويات المخزون الاستراتيجي من السلع المواد الغذائية والاستهلاكية، ولضمان سلاسة وسهولة تدفقها إلى الأسواق التعاونية. قامت وزارة الشؤون ممثلة بقطاع التعاون بتشكيل 6 فرق ميدانية بواقع فريق لكل محافظة، وذلك للمتابعة اليومية للتأكد من كفاية المخزون الاستراتيجي. إن هذا العمل هو ثمرة تنسيق وتخطيط مسبق مع جهات الدولة المختصة التي وضعت لضمان استدامة الأمن الغذائي في مختلف الأوقات، ودامت الكويت بحفظ الله ورعايته.
We'll now be joined by Dr. Awad El-Nasafi, a professor of accounting and finance at Al Yamama University. Dr. El-Nasafi specializes in financial markets, economic policy, and investment analysis, and is a frequent commentator on Gulf and international economic developments. Welcome, Doctor. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. And Eid Mubarak also.
Eid Mubarak to you too, sir. Let's begin with our first question. From a strategic accounting perspective, how can Kuwait best allocate its current oil windfall surpluses into productive capital investments rather than operational spendings?
First, I would like to say hi for all your audience, and to start with your question, I think a windfall is not wealth, it is a test. The real question is whether Kuwait spends the surplus or invests it, because the difference between those two verbs is the difference between one good year and one good generation. From my experience working across both Kuwait and Riyadh, the central discipline here is accounting classification. When you receive a surplus, the very first decision is whether it lands on an income statement as operating expenses or the balance sheet as a capital assets. Operating spending mean that's high salaries, expanded subsidies, recurrent transfer disappear with a single fiscal year and create a permanent obligation against a temporary inflow. While the capital investment, by contrast, build an assets base that generate return long after the oil price retreat.
Mm-hmm.
In my view, Kuwait should anchor this allocation in 3 layers. First, channel a defined share, ideally rule-based, not discretionary, into the future generation funds managed by KIA, Kuwait Investment Authority, the world oldest sovereign wealth fund. The KIA already converts hydrocarbonate revenue into a diversified global assets, and the windfall is precisely the moment to reinforce that pipeline. The second is deploying capital domestically into infrastructure with measurable economic multipliers like ports, logistic corridors, digital network, and project embedded in Kuwait Vision 2035, the new Kuwait development plan. The third one, and this is where the accountant in me insists, every dinar or real of capital spending must carry a return on invested capital threshold and transparent projects register. So the surplus funds assets that pay rather than liability that linger. GCC context makes this urgent. Oil price remains structurally volatile, shaped by OPEC Plus decision, shifting demand from Asia and the global energy transition. So, for example, Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund has shown what a disciplined surplus deployment looks like. Recycling oil revenue into a giga projects, and equity stakes that build non-oil income streams. Kuwait has deeper per capita reserve than almost any pair, but historically a heavier recurrent spending bias. The current surplus is the chance to rebalance that ratios. To close out, the data is clear. Surplus spend are forgotten in a year, while surplus invested compound for decade. Kuwait task is simply to treat this windfall as a seed capital for the post-oil economy, not as a bonus for the present.
Doctor, you present a very interesting notion that the decisions, the upcoming economic decisions, can either create one good year or one good generation. I think that's very important to keep our minds on. So, in other words, you're saying there needs to be a sort of reprioritizing of spending, that any expenditure should have an expected return in the near future. Do you think this will be a momentary shift in our economics, or will this be a long-term change, let's say?
Let me add on this. I think the main issue here, the uncertainty itself. In most of the world, uncertainty stops constructions. Anyway, and when you look at this is in Europe or United States or Asia, South America, wherever. When uncertainty always stopped construction. In our area, the strength of our reserve is precisely what allows the cranes to keep moving when others have to freeze. The first disadvantage is counter-cyclical capacity. And as you may know, GCC states hold among the lowest debt to GDP ratios and largest submergent buffers on Earth. When you combine all GCC investment funds, it will reach almost $4 billion. The combined assets of the region's submergent wealth fund run into trillions of dollars. That means when regional risk rises and private capital become cautious, Gulf governments can self-finance strategic projects rather than abandon them, similar to other countries. For example, Saudi Arabia continued funding NEOM and its Vision 2030 giga projects through oil price swing, precisely because the public investment fund to provide a stable internal funding base. Second lever, in my opinion, is smart financing structure. Strong reserves are not only a piggy bank, they are collateral and signal. A submergent with a deep buffers can issue debt at extremely favorable rates, blend public capital with private participation, and ring-fence strategic projects so they can insulated from short-term budget pressure. So in similar way, Kuwait National Development Plan, the 2035, and the project under Vision 2035 can use this exact approach. Reserve guarantee continuity, while structured finance keep the government cash flexible.
Doctor,
of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, please continue, sir.
Of course, the GCC operates its neighborhood where geopolitical tension, shipping routes risk, and oil price cycle are consistent variable, but that is exactly why reserve matter as a stabilizers. Investor, for example, watch the region, don't only ask, is there a risk? They ask who can absorb it. The Gulf answer is unusually strong. The credit rating of JCC Submergent and their bank reflect this resilience. keeping borrowing cost contained even when headlines turn negative. So to close that, reserves are not just saving, they are strategic continuity. In a region defined by volatility, the Gulf ability to keep building through the storm is its most underrated competitive edge.
Doctor, earlier you were speaking about public and private sectors ventures or projects and cooperation to get us through this crisis. Do you believe that this opportunity will leapfrog that expansion of the public and private sector working together, which would in turn advance Kuwait 2035 vision or Saudi Arabia's 2030 vision?
Sure. Anyway, you know, government always involved in this heavily, but they need the private sector. Also, when a public fund go on to the local market on the micro level, usually private sector always benefit from that. In the basic answer on your question, usually when we talk about we have big private sectors, especially when we talk about the Kuwait Borsa or TASI companies. That's always available and taking risk within the local market. So, but the main issue here is the market maturity. When we're looking, the problem here in GCC, most likely we have a small and medium-sized companies, and the structure of those companies need to be revised somehow to be big enough and also to be listed in the stock exchange. So why we need that? A market maturity measured not by how performs in calm seas, but how it hold in a storm. On that test, like for example, Kuwait Borsa or TASI, they should have a credibility that money over time flows. So this is the basic answer of your question.
Professor, I'm glad you brought up TASI and Borsa Kuwait because this brings us to our next question. How has the recent resilience and maturity of both Borsa Kuwait and Saudi Arabia's TASI, how has it helped stabilize investor sentiment during this escalation?
So to mention that, I believe that the markets are emotional anyway. Markets are emotional mechanic, which turn on a confidence. And what we have seen recently from Kuwait Borsa and Tadawul or TASI, all share index is the maturity to stay calm when the region around them is not. There is no struggle in both markets. So the structural story here is institutional deepening. Borsa Kuwait upgrade to emerging market status by FTSE Russell and MSCI and S&P Dow Jones over recent years was not cosmetics. It's brought in a passive index flows. Many people was thinking this is a cosmetic operation for upgrading Kuwait Borsa. But now with the crisis right away, it's brought a passive index flows. Foreign institutional participation and tightening government standards. That broader investor base act as a shock absorber. As you may see now, we have closing Hormuz and the tension between the United States and Iran, but still the market is stable. When geopolitical escalation hits a market dominance by long-term institutional money behaves very differently from one driven by retail panic. For example, Saudi Arabia TASI tells a parallel story at a greater scale. Tadawul is now among the largest exchange in emerging market universe. anchored by a giant like Saudi Aramco, Al Rajhi Bank, Sabex. Its inclusion in a global index channeled tens of billions of dollars in a foreign inflows. From my experience, tracking both markets, the key signal during the latest escalation was relative volatility. Yes, there were deep, but the magnitude and the duration were contained compared to historical episodes. That containment is a visible proof of maturity. We must be honest about context. Gulf exchange are not immune to oil price moving or regional security shocks, and energy heavy index weighting tie them to a commodity cycle. But diversification is improving. Banking, telecommunication, healthcare, and consumer names now give these index more balance than a decade ago. When we just look at the market 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and we are looking for the market now, the legal structure improved, the behavior also, the investor behavior improved and changed. So the regulatory reform by the Capital Market Authority, both countries have improved disclosure and reduced settlement risks. So as I mentioned earlier, the market maturity is measured not by how it performs in calm seas, but by how it holds in a storm. We are now in a storm, so on that test, Borsa Kuwait and TASI have earned a credibility that money over time flows.
Professor, how can listed companies on the stock markets use proactive corporate governance and transparent disclosures to reinforce international investor confidence right now?
So, in moments of uncertainty, capital does not flee toward the highest return. It flees toward the clearest information. So government and disclosure are no longer compliance items. They are the price of entry to global capital. Let me be specific about what proactive governance means right now. First, it means disclosure that get ahead of question. When regional risk rises, international investor immediately want to know a company exposure to supply chain, to currencies, to security disruption. The companies that win confidence are those that publish that exposure analysis before being asked, rather than issue reassurance after a sell-off. So transparency in the bad scenarios build more trust than optimism in the good one. Second, in my view, it means full alignment with IFRS, like the International Financial Standards, financial reporting standard, and high quality financial reporting. Both in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia have adopted international financial reporting standard, and that common language is what let a fund manager in London or in Singapore compare a Gulf company against the global peers without a discounts for obesity. Robust audit committees, genuinely independent board member, and the clear related party disclosure are the mechanism that turn a reporting standard into actual credibilities. The third one, it means consistencies. The same metric, the same cadence, quarter after quarter, so the market can model the business with confidence. So the GCC has made real progress here. The Capital Market Authority in Saudi Arabia and its counterparts in Kuwait have tightened governance code, mandated greater board independence, and pushed ESG, for example, and sustainability disclosure in line with global expectation. In Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, in Kuwait, the Vision 2035, both explicitly treat governance reform as economic infrastructure, because attracting foreign direct investment depends on it. But the burden here ultimately sits with each individual listed company to exceed the minimums. Strong governance is the cheapest capital a company will ever raise, because it lowers the risk premium investor demands. In this climate, like what we have right now, the most transparent company in the room is also the most fundable.
Professor, could this period serve as an ideal catalyst for accelerating ambitious non-oil growth targets embedded across the region?
Sure, that this period is the most important period to diversify our economy and move away from the oil dependency. As you may know, the volatility in oil prices is so high. So we are focusing here to secure the market and relaxing the volatility in a way or another by diversifies our economy. So in basic concept, yes, this is the most important time, especially when in Kuwait, for example, we are not exporting any oil at this moment because of the Iranian conflict right now with the United States and the closing of the Hormuz corridors. But if we are looking for stabilizing the economy, we must do the diversifies of the economy and funding that by the oil for a certain time until it starts up depending by itself.
Professor, looking at your experience in both Riyadh and here in Kuwait, how do the structural strength of Vision 2030 for Saudi Arabia and Vision 2035 for Kuwait complement each other in managing economic cycles and this crisis?
See, I think the most important when you're looking at the development plan like 2030 of Saudi Arabia and 2035, they both depend heavily on oil finance. So the volatility here is high and funding the projects. But the most important thing is funding those projects that will help diversify the economy. Also, it's not only diversifying the economy, it's building new jobs. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait has the same structure, heavy dependent on government. All the employment goes through the government. Private sector is not acting as it should be. So Saudi Arabia has go away from that. So now government is not offering jobs. Most jobs go to the private sectors. Private sector funded by the oil revenue, building good and big infrastructure in the private sector environment, strengthen TASI for the listed company, strengthen their regulation infrastructure. So I think Saudi Arabia now is living in the future. As one of my students told me, he told me that you're coming from Kuwait. I said, yes, I've come from Kuwait. So welcome to the future. Yes, it is a future now. But I believe that Kuwait will follow quickly because Kuwait is, comparing with Saudi Arabia, is small, smaller scale, and the infrastructure is easy to finance through the oil.
Well, Dr. Awad, I'd just like to thank you for joining us and taking the time to analyze the economic and financial implications and perhaps financial future of the region.
Thank you for having me here.
Of course, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Awad Al-Nasafi, a professor of accounting and finance at Al-Yamama University. As Washington weighs the possibility of a new agreement with Tehran, the issue is no longer just about diplomacy. For President Donald Trump, any deal with Iran would be tested first at home by markets, Republican war hawks, security concerns, and a political base watching closely for signs of weaknesses. The question now is not only whether Trump can reach an agreement with Iran, but whether such an agreement can survive the pressures in Washington, be accepted in Tehran, and hold under the weight of the next crisis. More on that in this report.
In Washington, the issue of a potential agreement with Iran does not appear to be merely a foreign negotiation between two countries behind closed doors. It's also a domestic test for President Donald Trump, caught between market pressure, security calculations, and the anger of Republican hawks. Trump wants to appear as the president capable of ending crisis and making deals. But an agreement with Iran is no ordinary deal. Every word in it is read in Washington as either a concession or a victory. Every clause, whether related to the nuclear program, sanctions, or the Strait of Hormuz, could turn into a domestic political battle. The first source of pressure on the U.S. president comes from the economy, tensions in the Gulf, and concerns over maritime navigation and energy supplies place the U.S. administration before a sensitive question. How long can it tolerate a crisis that puts pressure on fuel prices and markets? For that reason, some believe President Trump needs an agreement, or at least a temporary de-escalation, so he can tell the American public that he has regained control of the situation. But on the other side, there is counter-pressure from within his own political camp. Republican hawks fear that any agreement could give Iran room to breathe or appear to be a lighter version of previous agreements that Trump himself had strongly criticized. This is where the president equation becomes difficult. How can he sign an agreement with Tehran without appearing to his base as if he has backed down? The crisis does not stop in Washington. In Tehran, too, there are domestic calculations. Any agreement that does not lift part of the sanctions or does not give Iran clear gains will be difficult to sell internally. That's why both sides may need an agreement, but each side also needs to present it to its own audience as a victory, not a concession. This is where the possibility of failure emerges. The agreement could stumble over technical details, such as the level of uranium enrichment and international monitoring. It could also fail because of politics. If Trump raises the ceiling of his rhetoric, or if Iran rejects conditions it sees as dictates. It could also collapse under pressure from allies, or because of a failed incident that brings tensions back to square one. More dangerously, the alternative to an agreement is not clear. Washington is signaling that the military option remains on the table. This threat may push negotiations forward, but it could also push Iran towards a harder position. So the question today is not only, will Trump sign an agreement with Iran? The more important question is, can he sign an agreement that survives politically in Washington, is accepted in Tehran, and does not collapse at the first test?
And now we will be joined by Dr. Nabil Mikhail, a professor of political science at George Washington University, who specializes in international relations, U.S. foreign policy, and Middle East affairs, and is a respected analyst of global political developments and regional security issues. Hello, Dr. Nabil. It's a pleasure to speak to you once again, sir.
Thank you very much for these nice words, and thanks for the kind invitation. And let us hit the road and talk about a very critical position and situation here in Washington and all over the world.
Yes, let's do exactly that, sir. Now, we note that the recent meeting was not held at the White House as usual, but rather it was held at the National Security Council headquarters, and it was not publicly announced. How do you interpret this change? Is it merely a show of force by Trump, or is there a crisis in decision-making? Because if this was primarily a diplomatic meeting, it would be held in a diplomatic setting at the White House. But if it's a military meeting, it would be held at the National Security Council.
The atmosphere is very significant. Why? Because it indicates, as you said, a crisis management situation. It is called in the American dictionary a cabinet or a crisis cabinet meeting. So this means that the president will not invite all members of the cabinet, but a very selected few whose positions have relevance to national security. So it is a war council, it is a peace council, It is a high-level cabinet meeting that is often held secretly, and it is very, very exclusive, no leaks, no media contacts, and it means that the president is about to make an important decision. That has been the norm since President Harry S. Truman founded the National Security Council in 1947. So basically, President Trump is utilizing that tool of American foreign policy to organize the relationship with Iran, to talk about Lebanon, and to see how he's going to terminate or extend the crisis with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
But sir, if we are expecting optimistic news on a deal, would it not be in Trump's advantage to, he doesn't necessarily have to leak, but to announce that there's a lot of progress in negotiations, and that would help him to sort of calm down the markets. The fact that there are no leaks right now sets a certain tone in this phase of the negotiations.
Yeah, to a great extent, I do agree with you. And obviously, President Trump has refrained from making any public statements. Basically, all the comments, CNN, the New York Times, others, are trying to basically size up and measure what transpires or what is transpiring inside the mind of Trump. Meanwhile, he has delegated to his subordinates like Marco Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett, the chance to appear before the media and to give us a little bit of details about a potential agreement. When the Secretary of Treasury comes publicly, it means that Iran may get some money, or the deal would involve some monetary transactions. But Trump also is under pressure because in 10 days or 11 days, the United States will host the World Cup. He does not want war to loom large over the specter of a very delightful sports event. So somehow he will terminate the crisis. He can defer it, but he also wants a deal. And as was announced tentatively, the deal will last for 2 months, whereby some nuts and bolts will be hammered out in order to crystallize some sort of a framework, even if it is hazy, between Tehran and Washington.
So, Professor, is there a chance that this peace deal is just to allow the World Cup to happen without greater distractions?
Yeah, that's a factor for sure. You cannot deny it or you cannot rule it out. It is basically, like, for instance, last week, the Financial Times of the newspaper, it has an American edition, despite the fact that it is a British newspaper, said that the Mexican people are not happy with their nation holding the World Cup, a few matches, because just the country has been in agony for many years, and there is no need really to basically focus on a sports event that will drive attention away from the critical needs of the nation. America has a different mood. America is jubilant. American cities will host the World Cup. Tourists will come. We have here in the Washington, D.C., almost a circus. So many avenues, so many giant screens in public places, so much entertainment. Trump does not want the war on Iran to basically shatter that glorious, entertaining, enjoyable mood. Of course, he's concerned about America's national security, the prospects of the Democrats capturing the 2 houses of Congress, although actually that has been revised because the chances of Republicans still stand firm. But just Trump wants to move away from the Iran situation. And let me please add one very, very important thing that was reported 2 days ago in the online magazine Politico. America now is paying attention to Cuba. Apparently, intelligence reports are predicting a collapse of the communist government that was installed when Castro came to Havana in 1958. That also will be a big task for Rubio, considering that he's from a Cuban background. So the question is, can America handle all these crises, one in the Caribbean, one in Venezuela, one in Iran, whatever will erupt new? So I think just Trump now wants to close the Iran file. It's a headache for him. And let us stay deployed with our military forces and our navies in the Gulf waters, and we can monitor any agreement with the Iranians.
Sir, as you mentioned, Trump has a lot of conflicts on his table right now. And historically, this has been the killer or destroyer of empires, long logistic chains, too many vassal states or nations and objectives they need to attend to, too many smaller conflicts. Doesn't necessarily have to be one massive war. So is his attempt to leave the situation in the Middle East and focus on Cuba sort of to achieve some sort of victory anywhere in the world?
I mean, of course, the agenda is full, but there are also priorities. For instance, there has been so much talk about Iran, but let us, you and I, pay attention to Gaza. Thank goodness, and despite his brutality, so far, I mean Netanyahu, so far, the ceasefire in Gaza is holding. That's also a concern. Suppose that the Gaza crisis, God forbid, returns. That will be a major, major drawback for peace in the Middle East, for the stability of the region, and for the Palestinians in the first place. It depends on Trump's skills, how he can manage how we can multitask so many crises and potential crises on his agenda. One good thing that was very, very fortunate to him was the two summits that were held in China, in Beijing. His meeting with Xi of China, and 1 week later, the Russian-Chinese summit, because actually the two summits emphasized a strategic consensus between three giant nations, the US, Russia, and China. Strategic stability must be restored to the Arabian Gulf area. No major war, no regional war, no possession by Iran of a nuclear device or an atomic weapon. In addition to the fact that free passage in the Strait of Hormuz should be declared and promulgated. So that was actually very advantageous. So I should say also that Trump was lucky, because no American president has achieved such a level of endorsement by two nations that are not in accord with US diplomacy all the time. So it is better for Trump to utilize these advantages and just terminate the crisis and bolster ties with the Arab Gulf nations and monitor the situation. It is that simple. It is that big.
Professor, following the meeting at the National Security Council headquarters, does the final decision solely lie in Trump's hands after meeting with the senior advisors, or are there other factions who perhaps have too much sway in the administration right now?
That's a good question, but you have to realize that the talk on Iran is kept in secrecy. No much leaks have happened. And that's actually is good because it's not damaging to any situation. We do not know what transpires inside these in the SEC meetings, who the opposition is, who sides with Trump. That will come later when the history of the crisis will be scripted fully. Like, for instance, or there could be leaks given to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, others. But it's like what Bob Woodward, the famous writer from the Washington Post, writes. He presents a scenario of events that at this stage, we do not know the full story. But I think that the United States has a president now who has a command of most of the national security issues. And look how many people have been fired and left their jobs, from Paul Bondi, the Attorney General, to other cabinet members. So I think Trump also could be very much in control and dominating the scene. He can face opposition from a few of what's called Iran hawks, like Ted Cruz from Texas, from his own party, and others. But I think he can also confront them and tell them this is the best deal available for a nation that has been hostile to America for close to 50 years. So it depends on Trump's skills, how he can terminate the crisis, how can present the case. And I do not think before the American public, and I do not think that he will get so much opposition from the Europeans. for one, they did not join the blockade, so they ought to stay away from it. They have shown no national interest on their part to participate in this crisis, so they cannot be critical of it.
Professor, could you speak to us about the resignation of Tulsi Gabbard? We understand that she's citing a medical emergency in her family as the reason why she's left her post. But is there a chance that she left in this manner as to avoid the let's say, political drama that took place with Joe Kent, the former head of counterterrorism, who released a letter explaining his reasons for leaving the administration? Earlier in Trump's presidency, people looked to Joe Kent and Tulsi Gabbard to be the voice of reason when it comes to these foreign and long-lasting wars.
She is a very interesting figure. She is a very decent person. She has really a sublime character. And one unique thing about her is that she's the only member of Congress, because she represented a district in Hawaii in the U.S. House of Representatives, whose religion actually is Hindu. So she has been a maverick. She quit the Democratic Party, accusing it of being a party of an elite that is so divorced from the realities of the American middle class. As you may recall, she was the only, or one of very, very few members of Congress who campaigned against America's intervention in Syria. And I believe she went and met the ex-Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad. So she has been a maverick. When she signs a lucrative deal to write a book, she can tell us the story, but we respect her position and her attitude, that really her family is in an agony. Her husband is dying, so she would like to be with him at these critical moments. But I think her resignation still indicates that there is more or less a consensus among Trump's team of national security, and no major split has happened like what happened in previous administrations. So I do not think that her case is an illustration of serious divisions within the American intelligence community.
Professor Nabeel, could you tell us if you believe Trump has a better chance at striking a better deal with Iran than Obama did? Because it seems right now, where things stand, it's almost as if Trump has shot himself in the foot in regards to a deal. Before the war had started, the Omani mediators came out and said they were very close to signing a very favorable compromising deal between the U.S. and Iran.
This is true. No, I think President Trump stands in a much better position than his predecessors, especially Barack Obama and his deal of 2015. Why? Because Iran is much weaker now than what it was in the past. Second, the United States actually is physically present in the Gulf. So that could be an intimidation for the Iranians. Thirdly, Iran's internal situation is very divisive. The country is on the brink of bankruptcy. And Trump is not that generous with the Iranians. He just will unfreeze a few assets. Yeah, the media in America mentioned a figure of $25 billion. That is so essential for them to buy the basics that their nation requires and needs. So for sure, Trump, because also Obama never threatened to hit the Iranians militarily speaking. Trump did it along with Netanyahu. So for sure, President Trump has a much firm or a firmer standing versus the Iranians compared to what his predecessor Barack Obama had years ago.
Professor, are the economic crises and the prospects of global food shortage putting pressure on the U.S. administration right now to end this conflict as quickly as they can, especially with midterm elections approaching in November?
For sure, this is a factor, the humanitarian concern, and we saw really very, very agonizing scenes, people in the Philippines and Bangladesh driving their cars by pushing them by hand. There is no gasoline to run the engines. That was really quite painful. Sure, yeah, that could be a factor, and I hope that President Trump will attach that point to his speech terminating the crisis. And just, I can tell you, my dear, the markets will skyrocket. So, and with the World Cup coming, that can really be a good mood of optimism after a crisis that should have ended a long time ago.
Speaking on the point of optimistic rhetoric, could it be said that Trump's positive tweets in the last few weeks, a sort of shift in his tone towards Iran, were not a reflection of the reality of negotiations, but rather just something to calm the markets down, to keep public sentiment from rising against him?
Oh, yeah, sure. He reads a lot of reports. So if he wants to send a message of confidence to basically boost the morale of the market, investors, the American middle class, that is something that he should do. So he used it, and I hope that again, when he makes an announcement, that he will be genuine, not just manipulating things, and that will resonate very well with the American public, and it can also restore people's confidence in the United States, because the Europeans were afraid of many factors, including their lack of confidence in Trump. Is he going to drag them into a crisis, a long-term crisis with the Iranians? So if they see him finishing off the job quickly, that can help revive and rebuild American-European relations on firmer grounds.
Professor, looking at the negotiations, what are the most significant obstacles that could derail the agreements or be a poison pill in the talks? Would it be the uranium enrichment, the closure of the strait, the compensation or removing sanctions or returning frozen assets and funds?
No, the uranium question is very, very critical. It's a cardinal point. It's a point of contention. And I think there are some countries who are very sincere in resolving this issue. So I would expect Pakistan and perhaps Russia to be very positive factors. And like say, they can monitor the stockpile themselves and then come to the Americans and like say the Atomic Energy Agency and tell them the status of Iran's effort. But I think also it will be advisable for the Iranians to freeze their uranium enrichment activities for years. They do not need that energy now. If they are making money out of oil, that aspect of their energy strategy will not be urgent. So that is the most thorny issue. But with the good mediation of good countries like Russia and Pakistan, the issue could be handled wisely.
Well, Dr. Nabeel, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this interview. I'd just like to thank you once again for joining us and shedding light on the U.S.'s perspective on the crisis and negotiations.
Thank you, sir, and greeting to all of you. Today is the fourth day of the celebration of the Holy Feast of Eid al-Adha. May the Lord God bless Kuwait and its people and make this occasion a wonderful chance to have peace spread all over the globe.
Inshallah, Professor. Hopefully that is the case, sir.
Amen.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Nabeel Mikhail, a professor of political science at George Washington University. And now, as we come to the end of our live coverage, we extend our thanks to all of our guests and contributors for their valuable insights and analysis throughout this coverage. As the events continue to evolve and unfold, the importance of relying on accurate information and official updates remains essential in promoting awareness, stability, and public confidence. We will, of course, continue to monitor the developments closely and bring you all the latest updates across our news bulletins and live coverages. Until then, thank you all for watching, and from all of us here at KTV, we wish the state of Kuwait and the entire GCC region continued security, stability, and prosperity. As we conclude our live coverage, I'd just like to remind the viewers that you can tune in for more news and updates in our main bulletin at 7 p.m. Till then, thank you for watching and have a good day.